Vision is something many of us take for granted in their everyday lives, but that simply isn't the case for everybody. What is vision loss, vision impairment? How many people does it impact, and what are some of the steps that we can take toward serving that community? We'll be joined today by Dennis Zehner to break down those questions and more. That's all coming up right here, right now. My name is Sam Chen, and this is Face the Issues. Good evening and welcome to Face the Issues. I'm Sam Chen. Vision is something most of us take for granted, but as we know, for large parts of our population, seeing unimpaired is not something that is part of their everyday lives. The Sights for Hope, based here in the Lehigh Valley, working on serving that population. I'm joined today by their Executive Director and CEO, Dennis Zehner. Dennis, welcome to Face the Issues.
Thank you very much for having me, Sam.
It is good to have you here today. Now, Dennis, let's start with the 30,000-foot level before we get to the nitty-gritty. From the opening, I used the terms vision loss and visual impairment. A lot of different terms are thrown around, whether medically or in popular culture. What constitutes vision loss or visual impairment, and how do you guys address it?
Well, thank you. Yes, the term we use is visual impairment for a variety of reasons, up to and including the fact that it may not be always a matter of the biology of the human eye. Sometimes what we understand comes from something in our brain or our central nervous system. Anyway, we work with the people who have visual impairments, and that we define as having something that's uncorrectable, but yet impinges upon your ability to have the quality of life you want or do the things that you want to do in life. That's the definition that has going around and continues to grow in the industry as far as what a visual impairment is, as opposed to a technical number. We concentrate on the quality of life and the people's personal goals.
So with visual impairment, you said it's something that's uncorrectable. So someone that wears glasses as myself, we call them corrective lenses for a reason. That's not the population you're talking about.
That is correct. We say when everything is exhausted, such as glasses, contact lenses, surgeries, medications, that's when something's uncorrectable. Now, there are degrees to that as well. When you look at the scope of the issue, 1 in 8 Americans has some sort of tiny, whether it's a tiny difficulty or a large difficulty, with their vision, even after having some sort of correction.
Right, and so when we see this from time to time, people who wear glasses, but even if they wear them, it helps a little bit, but it does not bring them back to how you and I would see regularly.
That is correct, and those are the individuals that we specify and we work with at Sights for Hope. We are about empowering those people to achieve their own personal victories in life and maximize their independence. That's what we're about every day.
Okay, so let me ask you this: you said about 1 in 8. I mean, that's a significant number when you think about the amount of people that we would just know or run into on a regular basis. 1 in 8. Where does this kind of visual impairment come from? I'm assuming it's different for every person.
Absolutely, and when we say 1 in 8, again, that's any sort of difficulty with corrections. We deal obviously with the more severe end of it. Now, this comes from a variety of things. One is, of course, genetics, and what we see among our clients and patients, it's usually through either cataracts, diabetic retinopathy, are the leading causes. Sometimes it is, and sometimes it's also something that affects the brain more than the eyes themselves, such as a stroke or some sort of nervous system issue. The eyes are biologically fine, but something happens between the eyes and the brain where the message doesn't quite get translated properly.
Sure. So this is something where it's not, to your point, people come from a whole bunch of different reasons, but this is something that you have plenty of patients, of clients who have been seeing fine before and develop something later on.
Absolutely. Most of our clients, so the average age of our client or patient is 69 years old at this time. Most of people are live life as you and I have live our adult lives, and it does onset later in their lives. Again, either through the onset of diabetes, age, macular degeneration, which is also a very common cause, and that is and it is sometimes a very big adjustment people have to make in their lives. When this changes, it does literally change people's lives and their approaches to it in many fundamental ways.
I think one of the other misconceptions that I want to ask you about is a lot of times in popular culture, we tend to think people are either blind or they're seeing. But you're hinting at there are variances of visual impairment. Could you explain that a little bit?
Absolutely, and I'm thrilled that you brought that up, because that is one of the biggest misconceptions that is out there. You look on television; it's usually someone with a dog and dark glasses, and they can't see a thing. Actually, depending on where you look, statistically, it can be as low as 5% of the people under the low vision spectrum who actually are considered "quote unquote" blind, as most people would see it. Most people have vision or remnant vision. Again, so a majority of them do. So these are not people who can't see anything, but their ability to see is not as strong as yours or mine may be. And one of the things we do actually, and when we talk about what we do, is we give people strategies to use the vision they have to maximize it, because there are different types of ways people can see or not see, depending on the conditions that they deal with.
What are the biggest challenges you see then? And I think I remember years and years ago on the show MasterChef, there was a cook, Christine Ha, who was visually impaired. And it came out that, to your point, that she was not completely blind, that she had she could see shapes and lights and so on. And people are saying, well, she's not really visually impaired then. And yet, she couldn't see what was right in front of her as she was cooking, and she won the whole competition. What are some of the challenges that you see that the public may not know about?
One of the biggest challenges, of course, that people with severe visual impairments and uncorrected visual impairments deal with every day is simply getting from point A to point B, accessing things physically. That's why one of our most used services is transportation. That comes down to access to healthcare, access to food, and a lot of crucial services. On the physical end, that's something that I think doesn't get as much attention. But one of the biggest issues that is dealt with by our clients, and they tell us this, is the mental component, the idea of isolation, or the fact that their lives have been changed in such a fundamental way, and how to deal with that in an emotional way.
Yeah, I think that's something that we don't even think about sometimes, that especially if you've lived most of your life seeing, this sudden change is going to cause serious issues outside of just the physical. And tied to that, day-to-day living, you talked about transportation and the challenges and the needs with that. What is the reality? What you guys do is you work with these clients. What is the reality for them and the relationship that you guys form with them? Is this, you talked about the idea of using just like whatever abilities they have visually to help them. How successful do they become, and how easy is it to adapt to this?
The idea of success, of course, we talk about personal triumphs here. So it's not a hard and fast rule. And again, we talk about what's important to them. It's not uncommon for a client to receive a magnifier from us and break down crying, saying that we've changed in a good way, saying that we've changed their lives just because they can read the newspaper again. For some people, it's that simple. Some people, it's as simple as being able to have a Zoom conversation with their grandchild, or read their favorite book again. So the reality is there is hope to hit the goals and meet the goals that you want to achieve if you are willing to take the steps and engage with an organization such as ours. There are people there to help.
And how difficult is it for them? I know you see a lot of different clients, and I'm asking them about demographics, but how difficult is it for them, and how much work and dedication do they need to put into it?
Just like anything else in life, when your life fundamentally changes, it is a matter of doing work. It's a matter of changing your mindset. It's a matter of practicing pieces. We teach skills, but of course, it has to be practiced on a day in, day out basis. It's something you must dedicate yourself to. And what we find is once you have the right mental frame of mind, it is, I won't say easy, but it is something that is very achievable, because it's something you do every day. The tips and the tricks and the techniques you literally do every day. You mentioned cooking. One of the most popular programs we have teach people how to cook. Now, like we said, these are people who were used to making dinner throughout their entire adult lives. Now suddenly can't. Now, to them, the biggest victory is they were able to put they were able to put a dinner on their family's table like they used to. It does take some work, but it also takes the right spirit, and it takes the right individuals and the right organizations and services like Sites for Hope that help provide that empowerment.
Yeah, to your point, that both the physical, technical adjustments, but as well as the mental health aspect. Before we go to the breakdowns, last question in this segment. Talk about your clientele and the demographics. You said many of them are older. Do you also see children, youths? Is it across the spectrum? Who do you see coming through?
Most of our clients, demographically, if you look tend to be older adults. Of course, we treat Lehigh, Northampton, and Monroe counties. However, if you qualify as within our qualifications, having a severe visual impairment that impinges your quality of life, we'll take anyone of any age. One of the most popular things we do every summer is we have a summer camp for children who are ages 7 to 13 and deal with these issues. And we also are looking to begin Mommy and Me classes for children as young as toddlers. Just right now, when you look at the prevalence socially, you do see it being more prevalent right now in older folks. But right now, according to the CDC, 4 out of 10 Americans right now are at risk of developing those sort of severe visual impairments. So I think as the years go by, we're going to see that continue to broaden.
Yeah, that's a big number. So Dennis, thank you for the insight. Don't go away. When we come back, I want to talk about some of the programs, services, and solutions that you and your center are working on. So we'll be right back. Welcome back to Face the Issues. Dennis, again, thank you for joining us. Thank you for the work that you do. I want to shift to talk about solutions and services and your organization, Sites for Hope. Talk to us a little bit about Sites for Hope. You have different locations in different parts of the Lehigh Valley region. And you also recently had the name change. So some of our viewers may remember you by your old name. So tell us a little bit about who you are, the name change, and where people can find you.
Sure. For the last 10 years, our organization was known as the Center for Vision Loss. Previously, it actually represents the consolidation of 2 organizations that had existed in Lehigh and Northampton County. One was called ABVI. Another one was called Viable. Sometimes we hear those names thrown around. Our organization actually traces back to 1928. When 2 organizations were founded, one in Lehigh County and one in Northampton County. Again, they ended up consolidating in 2010 to create the organization. Along the way, we've also picked up Monroe County, so we actually serve all the Lehigh Valley and Monroe County with services that empower people with severe vision loss, uncorrected vision loss, to achieve their personal victories and maximize their independence. We took on the name Sites for Hope on April 6th because we wanted to tell the full story and talk about our impact more than talk about the challenge that is there. We believe that what we do is provide a site for hope in a metaphysical sense and sometimes a literal sense to the people in our community.
Yeah, and I like that approach of focusing on the future and focusing on where you're headed as opposed to the negative in the past. I want to ask you, but you just used the term personal victories. And in the last segment, you talked about the idea that there's not some national benchmark that we're all aiming for, that this is different for every person that comes in. Talk to me about this idea of personal victories. And if you have any stories or examples, what does that look like when you work with your clients?
It looks like, obviously, as it is for all people, it's what is personal to them. With a lot of our clients, it is, again, restoring some of the functions that they love to do throughout their lives. If someone loved playing music during their adult life and suddenly can't, their personal victory is picking up their guitar and being able to play again. For some people, it's able to cook again or to read the newspaper again. It is really different for everybody. And we have a lot of heartwarming stories, again, when we have people who can do these things that many of us take for granted, again, for the first time in their lives, and it's like turning on a light and bringing life and hope back into their lives. Again, we have tons of examples of there. It's not uncommon for someone to break down and cry in a very healthy, happy way to say you have changed our lives because of giving them a magnifier that allows them to read their favorite novel again. The common things are able to just going back to have things that you and I take for granted. There are a lot of stories out there, of course, of people who have visual impairments doing grand things such as climbing Mount Everest or doing something like that. But to our folks, something that may seem more mundane, like cooking dinner or reading the paper or being able to just live in their own home, the home they've built through their lives, is their Mount Everest. You talked a little bit about benchmarks a moment ago. Yeah, one of the benchmarks we do use here is we talk about assisted living. And 92% of our clients do not live in assisted living. And that's an impressive statistic when you factor in the age and the fact that they do have a severe visual impairment of some sort. So that's something we think very highly of, and that's one of our big benchmarks that we use. We also talk about quality of life and how we impact people's quality of life. 97% of our clients tell us that we impact their quality of life either improves or once it gets to an approved point stays at that level.
Yeah, that's and those are as good of benchmarks as you can ask to have. Let me ask you about the services and programs. You talked about in some cases it's as simple as giving someone a magnifying glass so they can see the paper again. What are some of the different services or programs? You said the Mommy and Me class that you're looking to open up. Talk to me about some of those different programs that people can expect to find at Sites for Hope.
Absolutely. We divide our programming and our services into 3 or 4 basic categories. One being skills education, and that is just exactly what you would think that is. It begins with orientation and mobility skills, and that's literally the skill of understanding where you are physically and how to move about. And then the rehabilitative techniques, which teach you how to do basic things again, such as cook or sort money or be able to do your own bills. So we do a lot of skills education. That's a big thing. We also work with specialized technologies, including the ones that we've talked about. We have a low vision optometrist who specializes in low vision. And what he's not about medications or surgeries. He's about finding what's best for you and your specific needs and what resources there are to help you do that. And then we have individualized support because we talk a lot about personal victories. So there are individualized support such as our transport services, which is huge, because especially during the COVID crisis, because we were able to continue connecting people with medical care and food access as they needed that during the COVID crisis. We also do a lot of support groups, and we are expanding our emotional counseling program because we continue to be impressed and more impressed and receive more and more feedback that say it's about the mental aspect and the emotional aspect. That's so important. Sometimes the key to independence is between one's 2 ears more than anything else.
And how long do your clients stay with you? Is this something where you hope they go through a program, they learn their skills, they can now graduate from it, so to speak, and go on their own? Or is this like a long-term, they're going to be there coming in and out, for the rest of their lives?
We have all ranges of that. We have people who have been with us a long time. Sometimes they just use our transportation service because that is something they will continue to need. An exciting thing we're actually also continuing to grow is a mentorship program, and we're starting that off this summer as well, where clients who've been with us a longer time can begin to mentor clients who are just coming in. Of course, as compassionate as me and my team are, unless we actually live the life, there's a way we can't connect that someone who lives the life can connect as well. And one other service I do want to mention is we do vision screenings for children. Sometimes as young as 6 months old. We go into schools, daycare centers, and we actually do most of our screenings for kindergarten registrations. And that's about, of course, identifying the kids who have these impairments or the beginning of these impairments and to have early intervention.
Yeah, which is, again, so important. Just because the majority of your clients are older doesn't mean that this doesn't impact everybody. Dennis, I want to ask something. If we've got someone who's watching this and perhaps is struggling with early stages of vision loss or more advanced, what would you tell them, and what can they expect if they come to your center? What can they expect that process to look like when they first walk in?
Sure. The process when they first walk in somewhat varies on what their particular needs and what they particularly present to us. We have a great intake person who does intake skills. What we would do first is really get to know the person and their needs. Most people who come to us end up having an evaluation with our optometrist, again, to find out exactly where they are, exactly where they can see, exactly where their field of vision is, whether it's the middle of the eye focus or off to a side. And again, we're working on those interventions. And then what happens if someone chooses to be a client of ours, they're assigned to a caseworker who works with our different services and helps come up with a program that's right for them. What I would want to say more than anything else to anybody who is dealing with this or feel that that's coming down the pike is very simply, and this is why we have our name as it is, there is hope. There is hope. There is, yes, life has changed it in a way, but it does not have to be it doesn't have to be the end of something. It can just be a comma instead of an exclamation point or a period. There is hope if you're willing to reach out and get it and find out and come to services like ours, because we're here to help.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. Speaking of that, you mentioned earlier you have different offices. You serve 3 counties, Lehigh County, Northampton County, and Monroe County in eastern Pennsylvania. Where are your offices located?
Sure. Our Lehigh Valley Services Center is in Allentown, Pennsylvania, on the south side of Allentown, and our Monroe Services Center is in outside of near Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania, in Hamilton Township. And these are located to be able to hit our greatest populations and hit and work with the most people possible. So we're very proud of being able to stretch out to those 3 areas and serve them. We're also looking in the future of other ways to continue to be in different physical places because we know it's a big area, of the 3-county area, with a population somewhere around 750,000, I believe, combined, maybe a little higher. So, but we are very much we try to be everywhere we can. We also do, especially with our screenings and our prevention programs, are out in the community during normal times.
Yeah. And again, for our viewers, anyone who wants to reach out or is interested in being involved or perhaps contributing to the cause, the website is sightsforhope.org. Dennis, thank you so much for that insight, for joining us. Don't go away. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Face the Issues. Dennis, thank you again for joining us and for your insights. Incredibly important topic that impacts so many people. So thank you for the work that you and your center do. And closing out, I want to ask you about your why. This why Sites for Hope. I mean, you've worked with a number of different organizations throughout your career. Why the decision to come here?
When this opportunity came about during a transitional time in my career, it spoke to me in a very personal way. My paternal grandfather growing up was maybe the most brilliant, naturally gifted human being I knew intellectually. He grew up in the 1930s in Philadelphia, dirt poor and legally blind. And people told him he wouldn't amount to anything. This is a man who wanted to go to college and pursue his own destiny and figure out where that would take him. The grandson in me would love to believe that he would have been a NASA guy or a big rocket scientist, but it doesn't matter. It was what he didn't have a chance to pursue his own destiny. And that, I remember that affecting me. And when I saw this when this position came up, I realized, well, this is a way to give back. I hate the fact that happened to my late grandfather. And it's why it may sound trite or corny. I'd like to have a situation where nobody else has to go through what he went through. I believe very truly that everyone has a right to pursue their chosen destiny. And that was taken away from my grandfather because of visual impairment and because there weren't services like ours back then. And if we can help someone else's grandfather, someone else's father, someone else's child meet their destiny or be able to pursue it, then it's a great way to honor his memory and bring extra meaning to the man's life.
Yeah, wow. That's and to your point, in back as when he was growing up, centers like this were scarce. And
right, they were very. They were just starting up, even in Pennsylvania, which is actually one of the most advanced states in terms of services like ours in the country.
Wow. And through your work, have you been able to witness these success stories that you're referencing?
I have been able to witness a number of them, being able to work with the clients or talk with the clients, and we're continuing to learn more and more about our success stories. I look at our clients as very inspirational people. I look at them as heroes to take something that is a big challenge and be able to continue on and find new ways and to adapt and lead the lives they want to lead. That's a true inspiration. And in many ways, they're truly heroes.
And that it reminds me of the great Helen Keller, who said, character and integrity is not made in ease and quiet, and it's through these struggles and overcoming them, and to your point, these personal victories that really build that character up.
Absolutely, and that's what we're about every day. And when we needed inspiration, we talk to some of our clients and just understand their stories and get to know them. And even through the COVID pandemic, to see the strength and the dignity in which they carry themselves is something that we can all take lessons from.
Absolutely. One example to set. Dennis, thank you so much for joining us and for the work that you do. We certainly appreciate it and wish you all the best.
Thank you, Sam, for having us.
Absolutely. It's our pleasure. That is our show for tonight. I want to thank Dennis Zehner and the entire team at Sites for Hope for the work that they do day in and day out. I want to thank you for tuning in and invite you to join us again right here next week. And until then, my name is Sam Chen. On behalf of all of us here at Face the Issues, thank you and good night.